But I want to start tonight with media that is supposed to be serious, or at least supposed to be capable of being serious and accurate and objective. That's the theory anyway. You see, the ABC gets about $1.2 billion of your taxpayers' dollars every year. They want more, and they're about to strike for higher wages. But it turns out that more and more people are deciding it's not their ABC. 9 newspapers today report the public broadcaster is calling in external consultants and setting up an internal advisory group to turn around a radio ratings slump. The latest survey shows all of the ABC's metro stations, and in particular their breakfast and drive programs, have shown a concerning drop on the previous year. Oh dear, and the falls are pretty steep. Melbourne fell from 7.4% audience share to 5.8%. In Sydney, they lost more than a third of their audience, falling from more than 9% to less than 6%. In fact, the ABC's Sydney radio audience has more than halved. It's dropped by more than half in just a couple of years. And the problem spread to Radio National too. The paper reports that Radio National's flagship breakfast program has slumped, with ratings for Patricia Karvelas continuing to fall after she took over from Fran Kelly. Now, in commercial radio, this would lead to some pretty dramatic changes, or some hosts being given the flick. But not at the ABC. They instead waste more taxpayers' money getting some external advice. Silly me, I actually give them advice for free. The ABC isolates itself from mainstream opinions. That's why it loses audiences. They cater only to the Green left, the Chardonnay socialists, the woke, the virtue signallers. Look, the ABC shouldn't really be driven by ratings, but it should strive to connect with mainstream Australia. But the chasm between the ABC and the mainstream is widening. And when they're criticised, well, they just circle the wagons.
45 articles in just 2 days attacking the ABC.
It's not my job to worry about the readership of News Corp outlets, but do they really want to see such a large number of correspondents for those newspapers banging on about the ABC? I don't think so.
Well, there was a furious backlash in the Murdoch press to a Four Corners special aired last week.
Yeah, at the ABC, they always reckon it's other people who are out of touch, like when their guy, Chairman Dan, won the state election in Victoria.
And I think there are genuine questions some in the media have to answer. If you read the newspapers and watched the TV news bulletins in this state over the last 3 or 4 weeks, you'd be hard-pressed to see the result represented. This is not a radical left-wing government, despite what some of the national media are saying. He builds things, but here in Victoria, they look like mainstream centrist objectives.
The leftist bias is just so obvious, and in the end, it insults audiences. The ABC insults them, and it breaks trust with their audiences too, because the ABC hosts pretend to be objective. They're ideological neuters, they reckon. Then we just hear more stuff like this.
And finally, Jim Chalmers, you mentioned the legacies of Paul Keating and Wayne Swan in your first speech to Parliament. In fact, I think you wrote your thesis on Paul Keating all those years ago. If Paul Keating was the self-described Placido Domingo of the economy, which singer suits you best?
Cringeworthy, isn't it? I reckon Milli Vanilli would be the answer, wouldn't it? But every day, in fact every hour, there are more examples of this sort of bias. Karvelas constantly takes her activism to the ABC Radio National audiences and social media. Probably might be a good time, especially after the last election, to think about the experience of others, she tweeted. Trans men giving birth is something that is happening in our community. Trans people are tired of being the source of others' outrage. It's a big ask to tell people that men are giving birth and then expect them to trust your views. Is there any risk? Do you think there's any risk at all, just a chance, that it's the ABC presenters who have lost touch with mainstream?
But without the mandate, I mean, I spent the weekend, for instance, at the Snow, and I was indoors, and I've got to say I barely saw a mask, and that's a high-risk environment where people are really congregated indoors, very close to each other. Will people heed the message, and when might it be necessary to actually say this must happen?
These taxpayer-funded commentators had absolute job security as they got all sorts of help to work from home during the pandemic, but now they're threatening strike action because they're not happy with an 11% pay rise over 3 years and a $1,500 sign-on fee. Totally divorced from the real world. I've worked there. Sure, it was a long time ago, but so many staff just wouldn't understand the work ethic and the demands of the real world, the private sector. If the ABC wants to boost its ratings, or more importantly, connect with mainstream Australians, it needs to spend less time and money on ridiculous social media stories about bisexual tortoises and every other silly bit of their sexual and gender activism, and also a lot less of this sort of inane, celebrity-focused shtick.
Wake me up before you go. Don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo.
This won't fix their problem. What the ABC needs most is diversity. It completely fails on diversity. Sure, it tries for all the skin colours, all the genders and sexual orientations it likes to explore, all that stuff, but the difference that really matters is missing. Differences of opinion, different perspectives, political or ideological differences, the crucial contest of ideas. It's just not there. All the ABC people who share opinions share green left cliches. So instead of robust debate or ideas to enliven the ABC, we get endlessly defensive special pleading like this from former ABC host John Fain in Yesterday's Age, where he says it's an embarrassing ABC secret that it survives on unpaid overtime, with the program makers absolutely committed to the output and the audience. And he says two of his former colleagues recently got new jobs with more than 50% extra pay, as he claims the talent drain is endless. Fain reckons ABC staff forego much better pay elsewhere in exchange for the cachet of working for the public broadcaster. I call BS on that. They like the sheltered workshop and they like pumping out green left propaganda. I mean, Fain should name these people, name the jobs, detail the pay, name their new jobs. Look, it's not just the ABC staff either who campaign for their own interests. Others in the ABC's corner are the Friends of the ABC and the pretentiously named ABC alumni. Then there's Labor and the Greens and the Teals and environmental groups and the unions. All these leftist outfits campaign for the ABC, but not because it amplifies leftist causes. No, surely not. All the green left activists love the ABC because it's scrupulously objective. Yeah, they just love the scrutiny of fair debate from the ABC. This is just terrific satire. This is better satire than anything we've seen from the never-ending line of green left and unfunny ABC comedians. But the joke, of course, is on us, because it's supposed to be your ABC, our ABC, but they all know it's really their ABC.